You've whispered it in the darkness, perhaps tonight. Why is this happening to me? Why won't it stop? Why does everything feel so heavy? The burden you're carrying has created a deafening silence from the heavens above. Nothing seems to add up. You've given your best effort, trusted, wished, and pushed forward. Yet everything keeps falling apart in your grasp. It feels like the cosmos itself is working against you, testing you past your breaking point, taking away everything until you're left with nothing but scattered pieces. Maybe you've watched others around you seem to float through life effortlessly while you struggle with every step. Their relationships appear solid while yours crumble. Their careers advance while yours stagnates. Their dreams manifest while yours seem to slip further away with each passing day. You begin to wonder if you're cursed, if you've somehow angered the universe, if you're being punished for something you can't even remember doing. The comparison becomes torture. Social media feeds fill with success stories, perfect moments, and triumphant announcements that feel like salt in your wounds. Everyone else seems to have figured out the secret formula for happiness, while you're still trying to solve the basic equation of survival. You start to question everything: your worth, your purpose, even your right to exist in a world that seems designed for everyone but you. But what if I told you that this very experience, this feeling of being singled out for suffering, is actually the universe's way of marking you as chosen? What if your pain isn't random chaos, but cosmic preparation? What if the reason you're being broken down so completely is because you're being prepared for something so significant that your current self simply couldn't handle it? There comes a moment when suffering no longer surprises you. It simply drains you. Trust becomes fragile, and the concept of any divine plan begins to feel like a heartless joke. But here you stand, still listening, still seeking answers. Perhaps not from optimism, but from desperation. Maybe you've been shattered so completely that pretending isn't an option anymore. And in that brutal honesty, there's something genuine. There's something the cosmos recognizes that society overlooks. This is the place where most people give up. This is where the majority decide that life is just random, that suffering has no meaning, that we're all just cosmic accidents stumbling through an indifferent universe. But you're still here. You're still searching. And that searching itself is evidence of something profound stirring within you. The ancient mystics called this the dark night of the soul, a period of spiritual dryness where everything you once believed is stripped away, where God seems absent, where meaning feels like a luxury you can no longer afford. Yet they also taught that this darkness isn't abandonment, it's preparation. It's the universe creating space for something larger than what you've known before. Consider the caterpillar in its chrysalis. From the outside, it appears dead, dissolved, finished. But inside that darkness, something miraculous is happening. The caterpillar's entire structure is breaking down into what scientists call imaginal soup, a complete dissolution of its former self. Yet within that soup lie imaginal cells, cells that carry the blueprint for wings, cells that remember what the caterpillar is destined to become. Your breaking is creating that same soup. Your old identity, your former limitations, your previous understanding of what's possible, it's all dissolving. And within that dissolution, your imaginal cells are activating. The part of you that remembers your true nature, your authentic power, your real purpose, it's beginning to organize itself into something entirely new. The suffering you've been given isn't accidental, isn't punishment, isn't without purpose. What appears to be an unending chain of devastation, might actually be the foundation for your metamorphosis. Hardship often masks its true intention. It arrives like a burglar, unexpected, confusing, and ruthless. There's no advance notice, no reasoning, only the cutting reality of what's lost and the empty feeling of being lost yourself. What once made perfect sense becomes foggy. What once brought peace now seems far away or completely gone. But here's what most people don't understand about divine strategy. The universe operates on what quantum physicists call the observer effect. Reality literally responds to consciousness. When you're operating from a limited consciousness, one built on fear, scarcity, and survival, you attract experiences that match that frequency. But when consciousness expands, when awareness deepens, when your inner landscape transforms, reality must shift to match your new level of being. The problem is that this transformation requires you to completely release who you think you are. Your ego, your identity, your carefully constructed sense of self, it all has to go. And the ego doesn't surrender willingly. It fights. It creates drama. It manufactures crisis after crisis to maintain its position as the central organizing principle of your life. So the universe has to break you down slowly, systematically, lovingly, but relentlessly. It removes your external supports, the job that defined you, the relationship that completed you, the dream that motivated you, forcing you to discover that your true source of power was never outside you to begin with. Every loss is actually a liberation. Every ending is actually a beginning. Every moment where you feel like you're losing yourself is actually a moment where you're finding who you really are, beneath all the conditioning, beneath all the expectations, beneath all the stories you've been telling yourself about what life should look like. Yet within this disorder, there exists a purposefulness that human eyes cannot detect. While it seems random, the hardship that enters your world is seldom without design. The cosmos doesn't operate wastefully. Every injury, every setback, every letdown holds significance, even when that significance takes time to reveal itself. Think about how nature works. A forest fire appears destructive, devastating, final. But ecologists know that certain seeds only germinate after exposure to fire. The heat cracks their protective shells, allowing new life to emerge. Some trees actually require fire to reproduce. Their cones won't open and release seeds until the temperature reaches a specific threshold. Your life operates on the same principle. There are aspects of your potential that will only activate under pressure. There are gifts lying dormant within you that can only emerge through adversity. There are strengths you possess that you'll never discover until you're forced to use them. The universe isn't cruel, it's efficient. It knows exactly what temperature your particular seeds need to crack open. It understands precisely how much pressure is required to activate your dormant gifts. It sees the diamond within the coal and applies exactly the right amount of heat and compression to reveal your brilliance. This is why your breaking feels so personal, so precise, so specifically designed to hurt you in your most vulnerable places. Because it is. The universe isn't using a generic approach with you. It's using a customized program designed specifically for your evolution, targeting exactly the areas where you need the most growth, challenging precisely the beliefs that are limiting your expansion. Most of society teaches you to run from pain at every turn. Our culture worships comfort, praises shortcuts, and celebrates getting things instantly. But the fundamental principles of existence don't run on ease. They run on development. In the cosmic economy, suffering isn't a penalty but a procedure. a flame that refines rather than a weapon that destroys. We live in a world that has completely misunderstood the purpose of discomfort. We've been conditioned to believe that happiness means the absence of problems, that success means avoiding all obstacles, that spiritual evolution should feel good all the time. But this is like believing that physical fitness should never involve muscle fatigue, or that learning should never involve confusion. The truth is that consciousness expands through contrast. You can't appreciate light without experiencing darkness. You can't understand love without facing its absence. You can't develop strength without encountering resistance. The universe uses polarity as its primary teaching tool because contrast creates clarity, and clarity creates choice, and choice creates growth. Every spiritual tradition throughout history has recognized this principle. The Buddhists speak of the necessity of suffering for awakening. The Christians understand that the path to resurrection leads through crucifixion. The alchemists knew that lead must be dissolved before it can become gold. The shamans teach that the medicine person is born through the wound. Your current pain isn't evidence that you're doing something wrong. It's evidence that you're being initiated into something greater. The intensity of your breaking is proportional to the magnitude of your becoming. The deeper your wounds, the more profound your potential healing. The more complete your dissolution, the more magnificent your reconstruction. Those chosen to bear deeper truths must first be cleared of everything superficial. Before a spirit can become a holy place, it must first be completely exposed. The force behind your destruction isn't careless, it's masterful. There's a reason change seldom occurs in broad daylight. Plants take root in the dark. Butterflies dissolve in quiet before they grow wings. The actual process of transformation often looks like complete collapse. When you examine your existence, you might see only wreckage, but underneath that destruction, something timeless and holy is establishing itself. The shattering isn't designed to diminish you. It's designed to restructure you. Ancient foundations are being removed. The temporary framework of fake identity, surface-level beliefs, and unfulfilled expectations must crumble so something more solid and genuine can emerge in its place. You haven't been thrown away. You're being cultivated, placed in a season you never chose, in conditions you can't comprehend. Yet this is where your foundation is strengthening. Not obvious to observers, not applauded by the world, but developing all the same. Every broken heart becomes fuel for wisdom. Every period of silence trains you to listen with greater depth, and gradually, almost invisibly, your soul starts to rebuild itself, not around what it once possessed, but around what it's growing into. The pain itself becomes the designer of your depth. In the quiet of struggle, the chatter of self-importance starts to disappear. You begin to detect whispers of something more ancient than your circumstances, something timeless. The universe doesn't rush when shaping destiny. It's not concerned with shallow achievement, but with enduring impact. So it works slowly, often through discomfort, building character where there was once only drive. The more empty you feel, the more space exists to be filled with what truly matters. What seems like loss could actually be protection. What appears to be failure might be your foundation. When the universe handles your brokenness, it's never the conclusion of your story. It's the start of understanding. Not the kind found in textbooks, but the kind you experience in your core. When everything around you shakes, what survives is what's authentic. And it's in those bare moments, when the mask falls away, when you have nothing left, that something remarkable starts to take shape. Understanding, substance, meaning. There's a profound intelligence operating in your life that your rational mind can't comprehend. This intelligence knows things about your future that you can't see, understands connections that you can't grasp, perceives patterns that are invisible to your current level of awareness. What looks like a closed door might be protecting you from a path that would have led to suffering. What feels like rejection might be redirection towards something far better suited to your true nature. What appears to be failure might be the universe's way of preventing you from succeeding at something that would have ultimately made you miserable. I once knew someone whose dream job fell through at the last minute. They were devastated, felt like the universe was punishing them, couldn't understand why everything they'd worked for was being taken away. 5 years later, they realized that if they'd gotten that job, they would have missed meeting their life partner, would have been living in the wrong city when their real calling emerged, would have been trapped in a career that looked good on paper, but would have slowly killed their soul. The universe sees the whole chessboard, while you can only see the next move. It's operating from a timeline perspective that encompasses not just this lifetime, but the eternal trajectory of your soul's evolution. What seems like a setback to you might be perfectly timed advancement from this larger perspective. This is why trust becomes so crucial during the breaking process. Not blind trust, but the kind of trust that comes from recognizing that there's an intelligence far greater than your ego mind orchestrating your life, and that this intelligence always has your highest good in mind, even when its methods seem harsh or incomprehensible. The breaking doesn't bury you, it gives birth to who you're meant to be. And while you can't see it yet, the same invisible force that permitted your pain is also orchestrating your comeback. From the unseen hand that shatters with purpose comes the transforming fire that communicates in its own unique way. Once everything familiar disappears, once your false self starts to dissolve, a different kind of communication begins in your life. It doesn't shout. It doesn't arrive wrapped in comforting words or warm reassurance. It communicates through stillness, through power, through change. The testing ground becomes your classroom, and struggle becomes the language through which profound wisdom gets taught. Where shallow requests once existed, now deep cries emerge from your very center. These aren't pleas for relief. They're calls for revelation. Flame doesn't seek permission. It simply consumes. Yet in its consumption lies understanding. Whatever is fake cannot withstand the heat. The dreams built on selfishness, the strategies created without proper alignment, the connections that once defined you, they melt away in the intensity. And as they disappear, what's left is what can't be stolen. Belief that doesn't depend on outcomes, closeness that doesn't require explanations, direction that doesn't crumble under stress. Within the workshop of suffering, your character isn't just tested, it gets completely remade. You start to recognize what carries eternal value and what was simply decoration. There are insights that only wounded tissue can hold, not because they're too complicated for the mind, but because they must be experienced to be grasped. Words created in comfort often ring empty to those who are hurting, but words born from within the flames carry a power that penetrates deeply. They aren't just sounds, they're tools. The transformation happening within you during this breaking process is literally changing your brain structure. Neuroscientists have discovered that trauma and recovery actually create new neural pathways, enhancing emotional intelligence, developing deeper empathy, and strengthening what they call psychological flexibility, the ability to adapt your thinking and behavior to changing circumstances. But there's something even more profound happening. The ancient traditions speak of something called soul retrieval, the process by which fragmented parts of your essential self are recovered and integrated. Every time you've been hurt, betrayed, or traumatized, a part of your authentic self went into hiding to protect itself from further damage. The breaking you're experiencing now is actually calling these lost parts of yourself home. The pressure, the crisis, the seeming chaos, it's creating conditions where these hidden aspects of your nature feel safe enough to emerge. Parts of you that you may have forgotten existed are beginning to reawaken. Your natural intuition, silenced by years of being told to be practical. Your creative expression, buried under the need to be responsible. Your spiritual gifts, hidden beneath the fear of being different. Your authentic voice, muffled by the desire to be accepted. Your true power, suppressed by the belief that you need to be small to be safe. All of these aspects of yourself are coming back online now, activated by the very experiences that seem to be destroying you. The universe is using your breaking to break you open, revealing capacities and gifts that have been dormant within you, waiting for the right conditions to emerge. The spirit that has survived the fire learns to speak less for attention and more for connection. And through that connection, a certain kind of influence develops. Not the influence of force, but of being. Others pay attention, not because you're louder, but because your words have been lived. So the fire isn't your ending. It's the start of your voice, the start of being rooted, the start of having real depth. Your spirit comes out of the furnace not untouched, but cleansed, made precious, made powerful. It no longer dreads the universe's silence because it has discovered that silence isn't emptiness, it's closeness. You become skilled in the language of flames, and in mastering this, you become skilled in the gentle strength that only those who have suffered greatly can possess. Coming out of the fire, something shifts, not just in your surroundings, but inside you. You no longer move through life with the same desperate need to be noticed, to be approved of, to be comprehended. Instead, you carry something much more valuable: proof. Proof that you've lasted, and more crucially, that you've grown. This shift is so subtle that you might not notice it at first, but others will. There's something different in your presence now, something that can't be faked or manufactured. You carry the quiet confidence of someone who has walked through hell and discovered that they're fireproof. Your nervous system has been rewired through adversity. Where you once reacted with anxiety to uncertainty, you now respond with curiosity. Where you once collapsed under pressure, you now find strength you didn't know you possessed. Where you once needed external validation to feel worthy, you now carry an unshakable sense of your own value. But here's what's truly remarkable. This transformation isn't just personal. The changes happening within you are having ripple effects throughout the entire field of consciousness. Every person who completes this journey of breaking and rebuilding becomes what quantum physicists call a morphic resonance, a living example that makes it easier for others to undergo the same transformation. Your healing literally makes healing more accessible for everyone around you. Your breakthrough creates a pathway for others to follow. Your willingness to be broken open and rebuilt creates permission for others to release their own outdated structures and evolve into their next level of being. This is why your suffering feels so significant, so intense, so all-consuming. You're not just transforming for yourself. You're serving as a pioneer, a bridge, a living demonstration of what's possible when someone surrenders completely to their own evolution and trusts the process, even when it makes no logical sense. While the world once judged value by flawlessness, you start to see that the universe chooses its representatives by their wounds. Not the hidden injuries kept secret, but the visible ones that testify to survival. These are the marks of someone who has journeyed through pain and still remains standing, not in resentment, but in understanding. Wounds communicate in ways words often can't. They declare, "I've walked this path." They announce, "I understand what breaking feels like." In a world filled with acting, nothing draws people more than realness. Those who have suffered greatly and chosen recovery become guides, not through force, but through their very existence. They don't have to justify why they shine. People sense it. There's a magnetic quality in their calmness, a trustworthiness in their gentle strength. The illumination they possess doesn't blind. It directs. It doesn't boast. It invites. And those still trapped in confusion are attracted not by teaching, but by the truth of what they witness being lived. Pain converted becomes strength, but not the kind that controls. It becomes a subtle, steadying influence. Someone who has bled and been healed no longer dreads imperfection. They welcome it. They don't speak as teachers, but as living examples. Every step taken after the destruction becomes part of a wordless message. And that message doesn't need recognition. It just needs to be walked, because the universe doesn't choose the untouchable. It appoints the touched, the injured, the ones who move more carefully now, but carry something sacred in their quietness. Recovery doesn't delete what occurred. It gives it new meaning. The betrayal, the loss, the mistakes, they don't disappear. They become parts of what you offer. There's an odd contradiction in how the most damaged containers become the most brilliant ones. Light flows through breaks more easily than through perfect glass. And in those breaks, others start to see their own image, their own possibility for healing. This process of meaning-making is one of the most profound aspects of human consciousness. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychologist, discovered that humans can endure almost any suffering if they can find meaning in it. But more than that, he found that the meaning we create from our suffering often becomes the very thing that transforms our pain into purpose. Your scars are becoming sacred texts, telling stories that can only be written in the language of survival. Each wound carries within it a lesson, a gift, a medicine that someone else desperately needs. The very experiences that you wish you could erase are becoming the qualifications for the work you're here to do. Think about the people who have influenced your life the most. Were they the ones who had never experienced pain? Or were they the ones who had been through something difficult and came out transformed? There's something magnetic about authentic transformation, something that draws people like a flame draws moths. The universe is not just healing you, it's preparing you to become a healer. It's not just strengthening you, it's training you to become a source of strength for others. It's not just teaching you, it's preparing you to become a teacher. Every lesson learned in the fire becomes a tool you can use to help someone else navigate their own burning. But here's the paradox. The more broken you've been, the more whole you become. The more lost you've felt, the more capable you become of helping others find their way. The more dark nights of the soul you've survived, the more qualified you become to hold space for someone else's darkness. Pain makes your power personal. You don't share theories, you share your experience. Not to promote yourself, but to show others that rising up is achievable. The universe doesn't lift up those with perfect records. It lifts up those with open hearts. And an open heart is one that has lived through its own destruction. That survival gives someone credibility. Not the kind that performs on platforms, but the kind that speaks softly into someone's deepest darkness. When you've genuinely healed, your existence becomes bigger than just yours. It becomes a reflection, a guide, a beacon for those who haven't yet found their way through. Not in spite of the scars, but because of them. When your scars start to glow, not as marks of disgrace, but as containers of light, something quiet yet powerful begins to happen. Release. It's no longer motivated by tiredness, terror, or giving up, but by understanding. You've learned that gripping tightly doesn't protect you. It traps you. Through pain, the fantasy of control disappears. You no longer feel the urge to force the universe to bend to your desires. Instead, you begin to flow with it. And in that flow, release is no longer weakness. It becomes the doorway to real power. This surrender isn't the kind the world teaches, the giving up, the resignation, the defeat. This is what spiritual masters call radical acceptance, the complete embracing of what is exactly as it is, without the need to change it, fix it, or understand it. It's the recognition that resistance to reality is the source of all suffering, and that freedom comes through alignment with the flow of existence rather than opposition to it. But here's what makes this surrender so powerful. It's not passive. It's the most active thing you can do. It requires tremendous courage to stop fighting, to release the illusion of control, to trust in intelligence greater than your own. It's easier to struggle than to surrender. It's more familiar to resist than to receive. When you finally learn to let go, really let go, something extraordinary happens. The universe, which seemed to be working against you, suddenly reveals that it was working for you all along. The obstacles that appeared to be blocking your path were actually redirecting you towards something better. The delays that frustrated you were protecting you from timing that would have been wrong. The losses that devastated you were making space for gains you couldn't have imagined. This is the great paradox of spiritual evolution. You have to lose everything you think you want in order to discover what you actually need. You have to be willing to die to who you think you are in order to be born into who you really are. You have to surrender your small story in order to step into your epic story. Letting go doesn't mean quitting. It means freeing yourself from the need to control every result and finally trusting the hidden wisdom that guided your breaking to also guide your becoming. True release isn't passive. It's a brave act of trust. It requires more courage to let go than to hold on. And once you do, room gets created. Room where pride used to live, where fear used to whisper, where ego used to grip. That room becomes the space where invisible power starts to flow. Not power that demands or pushes, but power that moves, smooth, constant, and precise. You start to grasp that divine strength doesn't work like worldly control. The universe doesn't operate through performance, but through placement. And that placement is always humble, not in worth, but in attitude. Release says, I no longer fight to become who I think I should be. I'm ready to become who I was always designed to be. If this message is resonating with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more insights into how the universe really works. In this condition, weights are lifted, the chaos quiets, focus becomes sharp. You're no longer rushing to be heard, to be correct, or to be acknowledged. You're simply there. And in that presence, hidden doors start to open inside and around you. The contradiction shows itself. By giving up the battle to stay in control, you gain access to something infinitely more powerful. Your history, with all its failures and suffering, becomes part of the structure, not something to be erased. The very experiences that once seemed to disqualify you now qualify you to carry depth, insight, and grace. And you understand, at last, that release was never about losing who you are. It was about discovering who you are. Beneath all the striving and ambition was someone designed for something more lasting than applause. Purpose. No longer fighting, you start to move with flow. Choices aren't forced, they're sensed. Direction doesn't come from pressure, but from peace. The invisible power of the universe works in this pattern. Slow, quiet, unstoppable. And as you walk in this surrendered strength, the burden you once carried changes into a presence you now embody. You're not trying to shine. You have become light, not through effort, but through yielding, not by holding tighter, but by releasing. This state of being represents what ancient traditions called Wu Wei, effortless action, moving in harmony with the natural flow of existence. When you're aligned with this flow, life stops being a struggle and becomes a dance. Opportunities appear without you having to chase them. Resources show up exactly when you need them. People and circumstances align themselves to support your highest good without you having to manipulate or control anything. You begin to understand that the universe operates through synchronicity rather than strategy, through magnetism rather than manipulation, through attraction rather than action. Your job isn't to make things happen. It's to become the kind of person to whom good things naturally happen. This doesn't mean you become passive or stop taking action. It means your actions arise from inspiration rather than desperation, from clarity rather than confusion, from love rather than fear. You still move through the world, but you move like water, finding the path of least resistance, flowing around obstacles rather than fighting them, always seeking the lowest point where you can be most useful. The power you access in this state is unlike anything you've experienced before. It's not the kind of power that dominates or controls. It's the kind of power that heals, that transforms, that elevates everyone it touches. It's power rooted in service rather than selfishness, in love rather than fear, in unity rather than separation. After the shattering, a new version of you starts to emerge, quietly, steadily, almost beyond recognition. The pain that once threatened to destroy you becomes the very ground from which power grows. Not everything gets restored to its original state, nor should it. Some parts remain changed, cracked, or completely missing. But those damaged edges reflect light in new ways now. The pieces of your former life start to create a different pattern. One that's not flawless, but more potent, more present, more authentic than before. What once seemed like complete ruin slowly shows itself as cosmic design. The universe doesn't fix things by turning back time. It redeems by rewriting significance. Scars once viewed as defects become the holy text of survival. They tell a tale not of weakness, but of resilience. Each one proves that something attempted to destroy you and couldn't. Your suffering becomes the ink through which mercy writes its story. But the most beautiful part of this transformation is that it doesn't end with you. The healing you've undergone, the wisdom you've gained, the strength you've developed, it all begins to radiate outward, touching every life you encounter. You become what Carl Jung called a wounded healer, someone whose own healing creates the capacity to facilitate healing in others. Your presence alone becomes therapeutic. People feel safer around you because you've learned to be safe with your own pain. They feel permission to be authentic because you've stopped pretending to be perfect. They feel hope for their own transformation because they can see the evidence of transformation standing right in front of them. This is how the universe multiplies the impact of your healing. Your individual journey of breaking and rebuilding becomes a catalyst for collective transformation. The courage you've developed becomes contagious. The peace you've found becomes a refuge for others. The love you've learned to give yourself becomes a model for others to follow. You realize that your breaking wasn't just about you. It was about everyone whose life you would touch afterward. Every person who would need to see that healing is possible, that transformation is real, that the human spirit is more resilient than we ever imagined. Your story becomes a bridge between despair and hope, between breaking and building, between the old world of suffering and the new world of possibility. When someone encounters you now, they don't just meet a person. They meet a presence that has been tested by fire, yet remains gentle enough to hold another's hand through the heat. There's a quiet power that rises from ruins. You start to see life in levels. What once made you angry now makes you humble. What once scared you now stabilizes you. Pain no longer controls you. It becomes a marker, not a home. The storms you weathered reset your priorities. Happiness becomes more basic. Calm becomes more valuable. And faith, real, lasting faith, is no longer a concept you discuss, but a force you embody. You don't grasp for certainty anymore. You move with confidence. I want to hear from you. What's one moment in your life when breaking led to your biggest breakthrough? Share your story in the comments below. This change doesn't announce itself dramatically. It comes slowly, almost silently, as you notice you're no longer responding from fear, but answering with wisdom. Where you once craved answers, now you provide presence. Where you once demanded explanations, now you offer understanding. People start to listen, not because you're loud, but because your very being has something to communicate. Redemption has changed your stance. You stand straighter, not because you're unbroken, but because you've learned how to walk while carrying pieces. You're no longer a victim of your story. You're a channel for its power. The ruins remain, but they've been reorganized into something beautiful, something helpful, something sacred. The universe didn't erase your past. It gave it new purpose. And now every step forward becomes a quiet statement. The breaking didn't destroy me. It prepared me. What began as a story of survival starts to shine beyond the boundaries of your own experience. You become a lighthouse, not because you planned to be one, but because you walked through flames and kept your light burning. People are attracted not to your perfection, but to your presence. There's a weight in your energy now, a calm authority that doesn't need to announce itself. You speak not as someone who studied the storm, but as one who has stood in its center, cried through its winds, and came out still alive. The light that now exists in you was created in darkness, and that beginning gives it a richness no spotlight could ever match. There's a specific gravity to a voice shaped by pain. It holds something the untested can't provide. Compassion without condescension, truth without arrogance. When others observe your life, they don't see someone who dodged the fall. They see someone who mastered the art of getting back up. And because of that, your story becomes a window through which others can see their own potential healing. Not everyone will grasp what you carry. Not everyone will understand what it required. But those who are meant to find you will. And when they do, your scars will communicate in the language of their hidden wounds. Being a lighthouse doesn't mean having every answer. It means staying willing to remain lit even when forces try to extinguish you. It means refusing to hide your journey just to appear together. The cracks in your foundation are no longer flaws. They're openings through which light flows out. You don't need a stage. Your presence delivers the message. Without effort, you become an invitation for others to feel, to heal, to trust again. The universe isn't using your perfection to touch the world. It's using your restoration. You've become evidence that healing is real, that growth is possible, and that pain doesn't get the final say. While others conceal their past in shame, you wear it like a beacon, because you know the darkness someone else is still navigating. What once almost destroyed you now becomes a roadmap for another person to follow. And the most beautiful part, you're not directing them to you. You're pointing them toward the same presence that guided you through. You aren't the destination. You're the proof that the pathway is real. Consider sharing this video with someone who needs to hear this message today. When you share these truths about transformation, you're not just helping them. You're strengthening your own understanding and creating an energetic ripple that accelerates healing for everyone it touches. Here's what most people don't understand. The universe operates on what ancient wisdom calls divine timing. Your breaking wasn't random. It was precisely timed to prepare you for what's coming. Every person who will need your specific kind of healing, your particular brand of hope, your unique testimony, they're all being prepared too. The universe doesn't waste pain. It transforms it into precisely the medicine someone else will desperately need. The depth you've gained through suffering creates what psychologists call post-traumatic growth. You don't just recover from trauma. You become stronger, wiser, and more capable than you were before it happened. Your neural pathways have been rewired through adversity. You now process life differently than those who haven't walked through fire. This isn't just spiritual, it's neurological. Your brain has literally been restructured by survival. In the end, suffering, when seen through the lens of eternity, stops being meaningless. It becomes the exact process through which a person gets refined, humbled, and prepared for their mission. The universe doesn't send you through pain to tear you down, but to build you into something more profound, more genuine, and more unbreakable. So if you're currently hurting, doubting, questioning your value in the shadows, remember this. The darkness you're walking through right now might be the exact place where your roots are growing strongest. And when you rise, and you will rise, you'll realize the pain wasn't your ending. It was the beginning of everything you were always meant to become. Now that you understand how the universe breaks you to bless you, discover how to maintain this elevated state by learning the secret to staying in high vibration all day, even when life tries to pull you down.